Welcome back. It's a new year and a new world order, or at least a new Washington order, when Congress is gavelled back into session tomorrow.
After World War II was over, we have, could I just say, 70 years, we have had a new world order, and it's been relatively peaceful. What we are allowing Vladimir Putin to do is undermine that world order. You are in danger of seeing the European Union come apart. That world order has to be maintained.
But I think that in the future, which is what you're asking, first of all, there are going to be many more people who have this capability of really transforming the world. But never before has technology been so borderless. You know, in the period that you're talking about, we had a lot of new technology, great technology. I write about the telegraph, but the telephone. But it is nothing like the digital revolution. We have massive flows of information across borders, massive flows of ideas. I don't think we can, as human beings, conceive of where this is actually headed. Or, you know, in August 27, 2015, 1 billion people were on Facebook at the same time. That was, a year and a half ago. But we're going to see 3, 4, 5 billion people on Facebook at one time. This is a kind of globalization that, you know, people in the early 20th century, even in science fiction, they couldn't conceive of. On the other hand, if you think about movement of people, the massive number of refugees that are moving around the world, I mean, this is, of course, one of the greatest tragedies. And it's a tragedy, human tragedy, and it's also a tragedy in my view, because I think the entire humanitarian apparatus has broken down. But that's a kind of globalization. We're looking at a tragedy of unbelievable proportions.
What's the logical end state of globalization? Is there going to be a Jean Monnet of the world? Are we going to have a single global currency? Are we going to have some form of global government?
Begins with another mass shooting in America. The scene this time, a busy airport in South Florida.
After a lone gunman began executing strangers at random in baggage claim.
His family said he came home with mental issues, hearing voices in his head.
Just 2 months ago, he walked into an FBI office in Alaska, claiming that his mind was being controlled by the CIA and the U.S. government, that they were forcing him to watch ISIS videos.
I mean, he did not say a single word. He was emotionless.
I just remember seeing his face and thinking, wow, he looks so young. He just had this blank stare, just kind of really just no emotion.
Often in lone wolf situations, the shooters either commit suicide or they commit suicide by cop. This was a somewhat different scenario.
This was a strange ending. Normally, it ends very violently, like it starts. By him, basically, it appears he emptied his gun and then lay prone, giving himself up without a fight, which is a strange conclusion to all of this.
It's destroyed us. It's destroyed everybody. It's destroyed us, and I just don't understand what is going on. My son is not a rapist.
Reeves supposedly told investigators he has a problem often hearing voices in his head that force him to make very bad decisions. He says a mental evaluation on Reeves should be performed to see if the voices in his head meets the legal standard of mental insanity.
It's so profound that he doesn't understand the wrongfulness of his acts, or the voices are so compelling that he feels powerless to resist them.
We're also getting disturbing new details from Fort Worth police about a man who's accused of murdering his wife and their newborn son.
In the affidavit, police say Vanderweech told a coworker that he recently started taking medication that makes him hear voices that tell him to kill people.
The officer noted in his report Vanderweech was showing no emotion.
What kind of a person would kill a baby? You know, babies, especially I don't know,
I was completely shocked that this had even happened in the first place.
This is the last photo Shanna Vanderwig posted on Facebook, just a few days after Thanksgiving.
2 weeks later, Vanderwijk and her 3-month-old son were found dead.
I know that she was so happy when she met him, and she kind of just changed, and they just seemed so happy together.
Take down a man wanted in 2 recent attacks near Duke University. Our cameras, the only ones there, as officers took Samuel Hasty into custody last night on Underwood Avenue. Hasty speaking to ABC 11 in an exclusive. It's not me, he says, the 27-year-old denying his involvement in the crimes for a very surprising reason.
Samuel Hasty agreed to a jailhouse interview here before facing a judge on sexual assault and robbery charges. He repeatedly denied involvement in the crime that happened November 30th on Swift Avenue and the one that happened Saturday afternoon at Duke Gardens. He says he is the man in the surveillance photo from a store where a credit card stolen from one victim was used, but when asked if he is not responsible for that or the assault at Duke Gardens, he told me he hears voices in his head.
They tell me to do stuff that sometimes I can't control, like they tell me to kill myself. They was telling me to hurt people. They were telling me to just do crazy stuff.
In Southington, trying to figure out what caused a loud boom that rocked neighbors earlier today. Folks in surrounding towns heard and even felt that blast as well. At least that's what it sounded like. So far, no one seems to know what it was.
It was loud, and I was sitting in the chair, like I said, in the house, and the house shook.
It was a quiet holiday morning. Most of the people had the day off.
It felt like an explosion to me.
When more than a half a dozen neighborhoods around Connecticut heard what many thought could have been a sonic boom.
I've never felt the house shake before.
From Waterbury to Wolcott to Cheshire to Southington, neighbors heard a thunderous explosion followed by a ground-shaking shockwave. It rattled windows, knocked pictures askew, and then stopped. Their neighborhoods were quiet once again. And all of our neighbors did too. Bob across the street, they were all out on the sidewalk staring up at the sky, talking about it, trying to figure out exactly where it came from. Matter of fact, they were surprised that they hadn't even heard sirens in the neighborhood.
We kept waiting for the sirens, and they didn't come. We kept following the feeds on Facebook, and it's up to 800-900 comments on it. And the police apparently didn't know what was going on.
I mean, really, it's a most unusual thing because there's no building missing a roof. There was no seismic activity that we know of, or earthquake, anything like that. They're just a loud boom, shook and rattled just for miles around.
Thanks so much, Bob. What could that have been? We'll find out at some point.
That the country will overcome the recent spate of attacks.
Witnesses say it looked like a war zone.
It's a more sustainable kind of globalization. And then you might see international institutions that are much smaller, much less, their ambitions are much, they're there to execute fewer things. And nation states that the governments are much more, they deal with one another, and globalization is a big issue. It's not kind of handed off. So I think that we may be headed for a different sort of model. I'm not sure, But the one thing I am sure of is we shouldn't be so wedded to what we've seen as the only way.